Well, welcome back, everyone. I am Jon Uhler, and this is Journey to Healing. We are in the midst of a series of grief and loss, an extended series on grief and loss. We are going into in-depth material as far as taking an in-depth look at those things well beyond regular what we think pertains to grief and loss. Certainly the loss of someone that we cared about is absolutely significant. But that tends to comprise about 10 to 20% of all the grief and loss we deal with. Most people are not aware of it. They may, in fact, be wrestling with that, but on top of it, and the reason they're finding it so hard to heal is they have people in their lives, they have relationships that are continuing to stir things up in the here and now that are preventing them from actually and finally resolving the issues. The other things in our life actually came from people's hurtfulness, people that should have known better, and they actually did know better, all things being equal, unless they were snookered by a sophisticated selfish person. And we call the selfish person, what Jesus called the selfish person, a pig. Okay, it's not name calling. It is a descriptive term looking at someone that is extremely self-absorbed to a pathological degree. Paul called them a fool in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 19 and 20. Solomon called them dogs. Peter called them both dogs and pigs, as well as Jesus did as well. So we're looking at an assessment I put together. We're calling it the WARTHOG. Let me see if I can get that back here. There it is. No, can I? Anyways, it'll show in just a moment. If you look at the red letters, there we go. So we're looking at what I call the WARTHOG, the WARTHOG test, which is looking at willfulness and responsibility. To what extent are they truthful and hurtful and oppressive and glib? So we're going through that right now. We're picking up where we left off last program. The previous program, we started this assessment, but it required, in my estimation, adding more to it. So we added a lot more to the willful aspect of it. Why? Because there are two primary things that will confuse a survivor or confuse someone that is thinking about having to implement boundaries. And the extent and the question that they have to wrestle with is this: to what extent does the selfish person know that they are being selfish, and to what extent can they make a change? To what extent can they help it? So do they know it, and can they help it? Willfulness tackles that second part. If they are willful, then they are making a choice. We're made up of mind, will, and emotions. So the mind's telling us one thing, emotions telling us another. What will we do? That's where our will comes in, the choice. So a willful person is making a choice. Now the question is, do they know it? So it really is in reverse, but do they know it? So they are capable. The willfulness is, do they know it? Now we're going to look at, are they responsible? And can they help it? Okay, so how can you be sure that the person in your life really can be held responsible, and then to what extent? Because the more of these that register for you, that resonate, then you're talking a professional grade pig or a warthog. Okay, to what extent would you describe this person that you're thinking about as conscientious, thoughtful, and kind? Are they kind? Are they thoughtful? Are they full of thought about you, and are they kind? And if you say, no, not at all, okay, that's a concern. That means they have no kindness within them. To what extent do they choose and intend to do what they do? Meaning, is it an accident? And how many times are you going to say it's an accident? Well, that's just how they are. So it's not an accident, is it? It's a way of being. It's who they have become. And Jim Ballantyne, hi. To what extent do they know the difference between right and wrong? Are they brain dead, or do they know the difference between right and wrong? There's a program for a number of the inmates in the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections called Thinking for a Change. Catchy title, But very few inmates, though I was responsible for the mental health unit, as far as the housing unit, so I can tell you the criminally insane. I can tell you what they're like. They're very consistent. Very few people don't know the difference between right and wrong. A quick way to discern that is this. Do they look to the right or left or pull the shades down before they're going to do what they're going to do? Crazy people don't do that. Okay, so to what extent do they know the difference between right and wrong? As a matter of fact, in my groups, I'd have a number of the guys talk about, hey, you know what? My mother didn't raise me like this. There you go. To what extent do they work on ensuring that they have decreased hurtfulness over time? So have you ever seen them purpose to work on themselves and to stop being hurtful? That's normal, by the way. If a person has not decreased their amount of piggishness, then they're choosing not to. To what extent do they give evidence of being able to control themselves and pretend to be a positive person when it benefits them? Meaning, when they're around other people, they have to control themselves if they want to come across as nice or capable or qualified or upstanding. Did you ever watch that person where they normally would go off? Oh, they'd say, oh, it's no big deal. The question is, why are they like that out in public, but behind closed doors? If that were to happen to them behind closed doors, people would pay and all hell would break loose. Okay. To what extent can they pretend to be nice and kind around others? A little bit similar. So to what extent can they pretend to be nice and kind around others, or when guests come over to the house, or when they're in public, and to what extent are they aware of what others are doing when they're around other people? Meaning, can they adapt? Can they kind of anticipate what's happening? Really, are they with it? Do they know how to adjust in public? And do they know how to give compliments to other people when they never give compliments at home? When you see that other person interacting out in public, how would you like to have that person at home? Meaning, you get the Dr. Is it Hyde? Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You get the Mr. Hyde part. They get everybody else gets to see. And that's why the pigs love going to church, because nobody knows them. Oh, they can smile and they know verses and they look so holy, and they'll have the pastor or the priest or whoever over at their house. And meanwhile, what are they doing? They're scurrying around, threatening the kids, getting them out of the way, or unbelievable. And no wonder so many people want nothing to do with Christianity or with churches or with any faith-based stuff. And to what extent do they flip the script and make it your fault? That's adept. If they always are turning it back on you, they know what they're doing, and therefore they're responsible. Okay, continuing on with the WARTHOG Assessment, we're down to T. T for truthfulness. This really has to do with the extent to which they are truthful, or the extent to which they are deceptive and lie. A pig must distort the truth at all cost. Thus, they lie professionally, deceive adeptly, and disarm another person's intuition. We talked about that just briefly. Again, intuition is it's really the flip side of conscience. So there are two mechanisms within us, God-given mechanisms, to help maintain boundaries, to help maintain the value and the respect and appreciation between two people. Ideally, somebody values their conscience and so is very receptive to that. So you'll actually never have to bring something up if somebody has a sensitive conscience. Why? They will self-monitor. They will dial it back. They will be remorseful. They are filled with empathy. Why? Because people matter to them. People matter to them more than themselves as far as their selfishness and their wants and whims. The me, myself, and I part of them is dialed back. They're no longer a big 2-year-old. So their conscience keeps them from devaluing you and disrespecting you. But to the extent that their ego is allowed to grow, Now we have the idea of the old-fashioned scales of justice kind of scales. As the selfish person's ego grows, what's happening at the same time? Their value of the other person is getting less, and we call that devaluing. They are increasing in their own estimation as far as their own value, and they are devaluing others. And this is long before anybody's caught on. If they don't stop it, does that mean they necessarily have to go and make amends? Well, no, because people may not have even noticed. But you keep going, and eventually it's going to come out in attitude and word and deed, and eventually you have a one-up, one-down relationship, the dumpor, who's dumping, and the dumpee. In one of the previous podcasts, we called that the person that's the dumpee is the super-duper pooper scooper, right? They're on the receiving end of all that. The gap between the one-up and one-down person, right there, that gap is the anxiety gap that the one-down person feels. Why? That anxiety is actually adrenaline, and the flip side of hurt, because this is hurtful. To be disrespected, the light's going. To be disrespected and devalued is hurtful. So the one-down person is being injured by degree. The further this goes, the more the injury will be pronounced. This is Matthew 5, where Jesus talks about to the one-up person. So the one-up person can justify and rationalize all day long. Jesus tells the one-up person, if you're at the altar presenting your gift and you remember it's like this, you remember you've been a jerk in attitude and then words and then ultimately being really hurtful in terms of running your mouth, then he tells the one-up person to stop playing religion and go make it right. You go humble yourself. You come down, the other person comes up. Why? Because the one down person, God's already taken note to help this person, because God helps the oppressed. And the one up person is in God's sight. And God has a heavenly drone, Psalm 52. David says, don't you get it, guy? So I'm rewording. Don't you understand, oh man, that God's justice is forever. If you have been hurtful, if you have been a pig, if you have been a jerk, if you've been a fool, if you've been a dog, or any other biblical term for it, if you've been slanderous, we talked about that last time. If you have slandered somebody's reputation, where it now has caused people to think differently of that person. Let's say you did something and now they set boundaries up and now it changed things. It changed the way the world is, changed your family because you're not coming around the family as much. And now the Christmas cards, that annual Christmas card doesn't have you in the picture. Well, either the selfish pig is going to humble himself to make things right, to clarify, or they're going to begin to maintain a ruse. Like, well, you know what? That person, we're always just overly sensitive. Well, we don't know. Oh, here it is. We don't know what happened. Really? So one way or another, you're calling the injured party, the person was minding his own business, doing the right thing, who set boundaries, and because a bunch of pigs in the family, at least one, didn't want to humble himself, now we have slandered that reputation, and now when more people start to ask, hey, I've noticed, why doesn't the person, where are they in the Christmas letter? You have a choice at that moment to humble yourself and come clean, or you will lie and you will slander that person's reputation. And keep going to church. Just pile it on. If you think God is an idiot, you're sadly mistaken. So keep playing. Keep going through the religious role. So, the issue of truthfulness. Again, how truthful? Would you characterize them as honest and upfront? Would you characterize them as a person of integrity when you're thinking of this person? Do they keep their promises? Do they keep their word? Are they willing to follow through on what they said they would do? Are they an open book when it comes to finances? Now it's kind of hitting home, huh? Are they an open book when it comes to finances, computer usage, what they watch on TV and their schedule and their whereabouts? Are they willing to be tracked and traced? That is a wonderful thing. Unless you are part of like law enforcement and can't let anybody know your whereabouts, men, there's no reason why, and there's every reason to make sure your spouse always knows where you are. Life 360, I'm not paid, this is not a paid announcement. Life 360 is a great app. It's a GPS. It also tells how fast you're going. I don't like that. So I strongly recommend Life 360. Everybody needs to have that on their phone. I'm not getting paid by them. Okay. Your wife should never wonder where you are. If she has to, there's probably a reason, and you know it. What do they watch on TV? Do you trust them? Do you trust their schedule and their whereabouts? Are they willing to be tracked? Do you wonder if they're telling you the truth? Do they erase their computer history? Do they try to say that porn will improve your relationship? Ladies, if you have a man saying that, you have a pig. Do they lock things and they only have the key, especially computer use? There better be a very good reason why, men, your wives don't have all your passwords. Do they say that certain things are off limits as far as going in certain places where they have information? Do they lie with ease, reframing them as they're just little light lies or little white lies? Are they truthful on their taxes? Now it's hitting home, huh? Now we need to be truthful on our taxes. Do they often say, well, I know what it looks like, but it's really not that? If you question the person's truthfulness, it's starting to fit into a picture, because pigs lie and they lie easily. How about hurtfulness, degrees of hurtfulness, using the WARTHOG Assessment? We've looked at willfulness and responsibility and truthfulness, now hurtfulness. The degree to which they take pleasure in making another person anxious or in emotionally punishing another person by withholding or by strategically going for the heart or jugular, or by slowly making them emotionally fade away into a shell of themselves. Think about Rapunzel. Think about what Mother Gothel did. So they can be controlled and recognize them as masters, so that the spouse or the kids can be controlled by the pig and recognize the pig as the master. Both genders can be controlling. Both genders can be punitive and withholding. Pigs come in both genders. So here's some questions. Do they target what is most sensitive or important to you? Do they derive a sense of satisfaction at knowing that they're causing you pain? That they're making you squirm, putting you through it? Do they know the impact they're having on you and continue anyways? Do they say they're sorry with genuine sincerity? Now just flip that, meaning if you haven't heard them say that they are sorry sincerely, then guess what? They're not. Do they shift the blame, making you responsible for their hurtful actions? Why do you make me do this to you? If you didn't drive me crazy like this, I wouldn't have to be this way. If you would stop nagging me about my drinking, I'd finally stop. That's pretty professional grade manipulation. Do they seem to enjoy watching you squirm? Do they put you down? Do they make passive-aggressive remarks while smiling at your face and adding a cute little emoji or hearts if they do it in text? Are they critical and fault-finding? That means they find the fault. They could look for the good, but they find the fault. That is, they're chipping away at you. Do they make excuses for their bitterness, their rage, their anger, and their harsh words? And do they readily, easily, and adeptly slander others? The Greek word for slander is the devil. Literally, it's diabolos. I'm no more like the devil if I run my mouth and chipping away at and hurting somebody's reputation. That is soul murder. And that goes on in churches all the time. It's unbelievable. and I'll tell you how I really feel about it. Okay, the O from the WARTHOG Assessment, oppressiveness. By placing their responsibility upon others, they become oppressive. Remember the one up, down, the scales, one up, one down. Okay? They do so by consistently violating their conscience to where it becomes calloused and cauterized. That comes from the Greek. Those are biblical concepts. If I violate my conscience, I'm now no longer sensitive, like the palm of my hand. If I start going against the grain of my conscience, now I have a callus, and it has to try to get my attention harder. No still small voice will get through to me. And I'm also cauterizing my conscience as far as the nerve endings of my conscience. That's why you can get to a point where you are beyond hope and beyond the point of no return. We call that a reprobate mind in Romans 1, even before the deviance and the pornified lifestyle. Okay, it takes a reprobate mind is a seared conscience first. Then you add pornographic stuff on top of it. Okay, how do they do that? They allow themselves to place their knapsack, their stuff, on somebody else. They disarm the other person's intuition. The other person can't quite then really be sure. And so they place their knapsack on you. Now you have two. The other person has one. They don't have any. They walk away load free. We call that a freeloader. And they do that by either dumping and stealing. They dump on you and they steal. They give you what you don't deserve, that's dumping, and they steal from you, they take from you what you do deserve, such as love, security, and compliments. That's different than flattery. Here's some questions. Do they weigh you down with stress, blame, criticism, negative comments? Do they create a negative atmosphere in the home? One easy way to discern that is, do people breathe a sigh of relief when you leave home or a sigh because they miss you? Is it that they can't wait for you to come home, or they scurry around to make sure you won't be in a bad mood? If that's the case, you're a pig. Do they and if you're not, then prove that you're not. If you take offense at me using the term pig, then prove that you're not. It's up to you. Do they constantly criticize you? Have you gotten to the point where you simply don't share with them because you know how it will go? Are they constantly fault-finding, yet say it is for your own best? Do they constantly nitpick, yet they say they're just trying to help you? When you get all A's and a B, where does their focus go? When your team won, do they highlight the success or, what you could do better and how you didn't really try your best? Do they punish you if you dropped the ball, missed the catch, or missed the shot? And do they make you practice? Like, who's more disappointed? The kid that misses the catch or the parent? Do they weigh you down with worry and anxiety? Do they cut you down? They act like you're and then they act like you're overly sensitive, or you take things too seriously. Do they make you walk on eggshells? Do they make you responsible for what kind of mood they will be in? Do they make you give up your family and friends and your hopes and dreams and even the person that you would marry? Do they criticize you for your choice on who you will date and marry because he or she doesn't fit in with the family for non-moral reasons? They're not Catholic enough. They're not Protestant enough. They're not whatever. Do they run off or criticize a decent person you're dating, thus sabotaging your chances at success? Remember what Gothel did? And she told Rapunzel, it never happened. She took the little flower. It just never happened. He's not in your life anymore. He's gone. Are they open to your opinion, your ideas, your thoughts and preferences, and your feelings? Do they see the pain on your face and the tears in your eyes when they've done something, yet blame you for it, or simply ignore what would be clear to anyone else in the room? Do they say you're overly sensitive? Do they take advantage of your desire to be nice or kind and use that to their advantage, leaving you feeling used and abused Do they call you stupid or dumb, either outright or in so many words? Do they put you down, and does it bother them? Do they make you the brunt of their jokes, yet say you are too sensitive for letting it bother you? Do they use passive-aggressive means of poking and jabbing, then insincerely apologize, yet continue to do it again time after time? Do they suggest you are selfish when you actually speak up and have your own voice and your own opinion, or how they've negatively impacted you? And do they play the martyr when no one brings up anything, or do they play the martyr to ensure that no one brings up anything that will upset them? And the last one is glibness, superficial manipulative charm, the ability to manipulate others, to work the crowd, to adeptly use impression management toward leaving a good impression and presenting themselves in the best possible light toward their own desired ends. We're going to find out if they're capable. Ready? So they've been all like everything we talked about behind closed doors, but here we are. Here they go in public. Do they have people fooled outside of the home about who they are, where you saw really what was going on, and the people think that you're actually fortunate to live with them and have them for a parent or have them for a spouse? Do they turn it on and off based upon what is in it for them and who they want to impress or manipulate? Do they act like a car salesman or a politician in front of people? Do they know how to work a crowd, especially at church and in front of the cameras? Can they turn it on or off on cue or on a dime when they step out of the car, when the phone rings, or when the curtain goes up? And do they cause you to give up and give in and not know why, other than you feel guilty for ever having thought to speak up or say what you wanted? That summarizes what a pig is. We will look at, if you have concluded that you may have indeed a pig in your life, we will look at, what do you do? What do you do once you finally realize, you know what, I think it's hurting me? We will look at setting boundaries. How do you do that with the pigs in your life? Next time on Journey to Healing.
You've been listening to Journey to Healing, sponsored by SurvivorSupport.net. We trust you've been helped by the information our host, Jon Uhler, has shared. To donate to this ministry, schedule a personal consultation with Jon, or to arrange a professional training for your church or organization with Jon, simply visit our website. On behalf of Survivor Support, we look forward to hearing from you and to have you join us next time on Journey to Healing.